Hey, how's it going? I'm Walid Chaya.
I'm Kavita Raj.
And this is Lights,
Camera,
and Conversation. How are you, Kavita?
I am good. How are you?
Cheers.
Cheers.
Very good. Very exciting last week.
Oh my gosh, yes.
As you know, I had my show, Darn It, Darla.
Yes, tell me how that went.
So well, it's a play that Lavinia Roberts wrote, and I directed and had a part in.
Okay.
A short play, part of a competition.
Okay.
And the goal is to take it from here and then shoot it into a film.
Oh, wow.
And just, really, we're going through multimedia mediums with this, from stage to screen. And that's great because, as you know, it picks up a life of its own with publicity and a following through the theater, and then we can bring it to screen to a wider audience. That's the hope. So
This
it's been
is so
a busy
exciting.
week.
Oh my gosh, how fun. This is exciting.
Yes.
And when do you think it may come on screen once the decisions are made?
That's going to be a fall production, so more to come in the upcoming episodes. What about you? What have you been up to this last week?
It's been an amazing week. We had a couple of gigs, a couple of performances that my daughter performed at, and being part of the production team, supporting, being backstage, being the unpaid roadie, as most parents are, is exciting. But it's always great and fun to support your friends and family as they're going through this growth journey. So that was fantastic. Also, a couple of wonderful social media meetings with experts in the business. The platforms are having updates. They have changes. They have new regulations around these things. So I think every few months or so, one is revisiting how to best utilize these platforms and how to make their content really be reachable and seen.
Their algorithm changes, advances. They release new features, like you said, which affect the algorithm. So we need to learn to use them to our best if we want our media to be seen, if we want to be heard and discovered as artists.
Yes, especially in the world of being an independent artist. Whether you're in film and TV or music, you have to do a lot of it on your own. It's a DIY system. So yeah.
And on these social media platforms, we find sharings of a lot of items, but definitely of culture.
Yes.
Yeah, culture from what's in your own backyard and community to food, lifestyle, and of course entertainment.
Yeah.
And that is a great segue to today's topic.
And tell us about it. Tell us what it is.
Absolutely. We're talking about cultural appropriation in Hollywood and beyond.
Yes.
So as Asian American artists and entrepreneurs, I feel like we're more sensitive and conscious of cultural appropriation.
The way I was raised, it's like, oh my God, do the work, do good work. Your work will be seen and heard, and nothing else matters, right? But I have to credit the young generation, Gen Z in particular, TikTok in particular, Instagram, for teaching me that it is great to speak up. It's an obligation to speak up, but it is very important to discuss this.
And I've seen it shape my own life as a child growing up.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little story example. When I was in elementary school, my mom would pack my lunches and she'd make me sandwiches with pita bread. I felt like I couldn't show up at school with this pita bread. And I told my mom when I got home, Mom, please go buy me the square bread.
Yes.
I didn't even know what it was
like
called, like Wonder
bread.
Bread or white bread. I just was like, I need the square bread.
Yes.
I just want to look and feel like every other kid.
Yes.
Because I was, a minority, and in a lot of rooms I still am. I'm lucky to live in LA where I'm around a lot more cultures than in some other places. It's really a melting pot in some ways. But that was a moment where I realized I'm dealing with cultural appropriation over a meal that no one else had much to say about, but I was feeling and going through an experience with.
It's one of those things where in the name of assimilation, we tout being fully assimilated into the mainstream culture as something to be super proud of. In that journey, in that process, if we are shedding away elements of our own culture that we grew up with, that's actually a sad thing. And we forget that that is something that we may have unconsciously done or consciously done due to societal pressures. And I think trying to unlearn that habit and trying to reclaim your own culture and trying to stand up for it and be proud of it and be, joyful to share it is a new learning for me, and I have to say I'm so proud of the young generation for speaking up, speaking out, and
being proud of where they come from.
Yeah. So that brings us to how much we saw cultural appropriation in film, TV, and music growing up, and we thought it was okay. We tolerated it. You may have felt somewhere deep down that this just doesn't feel too right or this doesn't look right, but we accepted it. And now those things are being called out, and the change is slowly starting to happen, the shift. And I feel like people in positions of power, casting, production, direction, are taking note. And these steps are happening. What do you think?
Well, we're looking at leveling the playing field. We're looking at equality here. So when we level the playing field, people say, well, you know, if we are going to, in Little Mermaid, right, have a black girl play a character that was white initially, can we have a black character played by a white person? And I think you have to be socially conscious of the temperature in the room.
Yeah.
You can't be tone deaf. Right now, the whole point is to level the playing field. So in my opinion, you know, yes and no, those answers change. They're not always solid. But right now, the answer is no, that's not appropriate, in my personal opinion, because the goal is to create more opportunities for those underrepresented voices.
Right.
And so that's the primary focus now, so we can't take away from it. And that will lead to more authentic work. So what do you think about that?
For me, it was more than the fact that it was a new artist doing this. It was the amount of dialogue about how, people were offended by the casting of a black girl as a red-haired, white animated character. And I really do think that there is cultural appropriation, and then there is just, overdoing the rhetoric. Sometimes these are like, totally created characters by Disney. So for it to be reinvented or recreated is okay.
So let's go into that, because Disney's known for having a lot of backlash when it comes to cultural appropriation, right? From Aladdin being criticized for Middle Eastern and South Asian stereotypes, from the setting to the music and all that, and a mix of the Aladdin story being actually a Chinese story, I believe, to then mixing it with Middle Eastern and Indian. And there's a ride at Disney, I believe it's Splash Mountain, that they're converting into Princess and the Frog. And it's been commented that it has a lot of cultural appropriation, a lot of elements where, these aren't the types of settings and scenes we should be seeing today because they're inappropriate.
It is so crazy that we are still talking about Disney, which is, one of the largest, carriers of child-friendly animated content that has gotten it incorrectly for so long. And when they are trying to be inclusive and they're trying to open up and they're trying to be like, okay, we need to reinvent these characters and be more, open to all kinds of casting, that there is such a hue and cry about it.
Okay.
And that dilutes the conversation, and that should not get lost in, the discussion. So.
And I do see Disney making some progress in terms of the newer content we're seeing now, being more diverse, being more inclusive. I just think there's always work to do. And, there's something new that's coming to Netflix, and it's called Queen Cleopatra. Have you heard about this?
I think I just read about it, yeah.
So it's a new Netflix, I believe, documentary. And it's telling the story of Cleopatra. And the Ministry of Tourism in Egypt is not happy with it because Cleopatra in Netflix's new project is played by an actress that is black. And Egyptians, they're experts there in archaeology and history, have teamed up with the Department of Tourism or the Ministry of Tourism and said, this does not accurately depict our country and our people and our lineage and our history. Cleopatra actually was light-skinned and more of Greek descent, so they believe, these Egyptian experts say. And they think that it's providing an inaccurate representation of their country, of their culture, and they've had lawyers come in and write to Netflix asking them to do something about it, to fix that misrepresentation. So what I found was interesting is that the Department of Tourism in Egypt. They have a state media department for documentaries, and they're producing their own Cleopatra docuseries with their depiction of what's accurate, telling the story of their history. And an article I read in May about it said that they're hoping Netflix also picks that up and shows both versions so that they can have their authentic voice heard.
You know, that is so wonderfully said, because there's a fine line between appreciation and appropriation. And appropriation is when it is not properly depicted using the voices of the people whose culture you're talking about or writing about, right? That due credit needs to be given to the culture, to the creators of a story, or to the historians that have, like, you know, conveyed the stories. I think that appreciation is well-meaning. Appreciation is very heartfelt. However, when that fine line is crossed over into going ahead and using elements and portions of that without due credit, things start to get a little bit, offensive. And I think that they are fair in thinking the way they think, and then we'll see how this unfolds, how their documentary turns out, and if Netflix actually does do something about it. It's very similar to so many stories, from musicians wearing bindis, Hindu representation of your third eye, and Indians wearing it today in modern culture as a sticker. It could look beautiful, it could be glittery. It doesn't have to be the traditional red powder that used to be worn years ago. But being worn by people of other cultures, I personally don't feel too offended by it. I personally do think that it is a cultural/borderline fashion statement, but it depends on the context in which you wear it and the way in which it's worn and the intention to celebrate, to kind of be fashion forward and to incorporate such elements into, like, mainstream pop music is great, but you have to be very respectful when it comes to borrowing from other cultures. Similarly, there's so many music videos we've seen shot in various countries. It just, it's one of those things. It does offend some people when there's music videos being made in front of, say, a Hindu temple, and the dance is, not culturally relevant in that place or in that moment. It does offend some cultures, and those things have to be noted. And I think that the right response needs to be given, and the right actions need to be taken, and the stories need to be told in an authentic fashion. Again, coming back to that authenticity and good intention. And it's okay to make a mistake as long as you address it, correct it, and move forward in a positive light.
When it comes to my own art, I'm conscious about cultural appropriation, and I'm always learning and growing and trying to be, more honest and tell a truthful story, right? My latest project, Crazy Rich Arabs, that I'm currently in development with, I had my mom take a look at it, and she said, "Oh, it's so funny, but you should really have, someone in Lebanon who's in the filmmaking industry read your script and give you some feedback." Why? Because my film is set between Lebanon and Los Angeles, and I want to make sure the image I'm giving of the Lebanese country, the people, also highlighting that the characters are from different religious backgrounds, some Christian, some Muslim, just making sure everyone is being authentically represented. I co-wrote it, but generally speaking, my knowledge of the culture is still limited to my experience, and so that was very helpful, her giving me that advice so that I can get feedback from people that might also be of Lebanese or Arab background, but have a different history, have different experiences, so they can make sure that the way I'm presenting the material is appropriate.
Even you, as someone from that region, making a film was great advice to get expert advice, feedback on it so that it's well documented.
Yes, thank you. Now, just curious, what are some moments that stand out to you in cultural appropriation in relation to music?
Oh my gosh, there is just so much. Like I said, for me, it was, the hair gets me always. So many artists in music borrowing from whatever hairstyle is trending in that moment. And so many dances, like I said, being done without really understanding the history or the cultural richness of that tradition. People using Bollywood dance hands gestures, or Bollywood pieces of clothing, jewelry, without context. We have to also understand if people did this without the right information by accident, or whether this was just something that was deliberately done. But either way, we're in a time where we have to educate ourselves, and we have to take that effort to gain that knowledge before we put forward like a piece of work.
Your voice counts.
Yeah, and in the name of our cultures becoming mainstream, we're very tolerant when A-list actors or A-list musicians or celebrities bring your culture to light in their music or in their dance or on stage at the Grammys, in performances. In some ways, we used to be proud watching that. Like, oh my God, this superstar is wearing a bindi. The superstar is wearing like a sari. The superstar is wearing like a, like an Indian jewelry piece. But it is something that we now have to be like, does it make sense? Does it add value to the music? Is this fair? Have they given due credit?
What's interesting is that what's appropriate will change within that culture and within that space. For example, for me, when I'm in Lebanon, I'm the American, okay? But when I'm in America, I'm the Lebanese kid.
Yeah.
And so that changes the perspective and lens. The cultures see me and what they expect. In Lebanon, they expect the American to talk and act a certain way from America, and vice versa. Here in America, people have expectations of what I might be like or what I might like being Lebanese, even though I was basically fully raised and grew up here, right? Yeah. And so I think that's interesting too. And then how does that affect our art, whether directly or indirectly?
Yeah, there should be like a whole story of third culture kids, right? There should be its own storyline where I'm too American in India and I'm too Indian in America. So then where do I belong? What's my story, right? It is the immigrant story. It is that we're not in no man's land. We have homes, we have lands, we are a product of multiple cultures. So we really have to have our own third culture, which is like a blend of where we are, a blend of where we came from, and that in-between culture and that story also needs to be told, it needs to be represented, and that's its own unique situation. It's its own separate experience.
I've heard artists say that they should turn down roles that aren't written for their culture. So for example, let's say I get offered a role as a Latin character. Now, people think I'm Latin sometimes. I also speak Spanish decently well. I believe acting is about make-believe. I could play a Latin character. But some people would say, no, but you shouldn't. That should go to a Latin person, a person of Latin descent, of Hispanic descent. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my God, what a great conversation you bring up, because they call it ethnically ambiguous.
Yes.
Right? Where you can actually play these different roles. But should you? So you guys, I really want to hear from our viewers in the comment section this week whether they are, agreeing with this or what their thoughts are. That is a great question. I don't know, as an individual artist, you may want to advance and further your opportunities by checking every box, but should you? So then if you tell your agent, yes, I could play a Latin character, and then when that role comes to you, you're like, I don't know if I should really take this. It just feels like I'm, walking on that fine line and really getting into that territory.
I think the answer is it's a case-by-case basis, right?
Yeah.
Project to project. If the character itself and the plot of the story really revolves on that character's culture and identity, then it makes sense for me to say no to it. But if it just so happens that that character is Latin, but really nothing else really matters in terms of their culture or background in relation to the heritage, the story centers about perhaps an experience or scenario they deal with that anyone of any culture can, then I think the focus, is not on the cultural appropriation there. That's not going to be identified and highlighted. So I would think, for me personally, why not? And I'll tell you a similar experience I had. Recently, a director that I know had posted looking for actors of Middle Eastern descent. He had specifically written a role in a film. I spoke about this film before, Leaves of Glass. That was a character of, I believe, Persian descent, Armenian, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I know it wasn't Lebanese, okay? But I thought, hey, I'm Middle Eastern. Let me, see if I'm right for the role. So we had a conversation, and he was open-minded. He said, this character could be Lebanese. And when I got the script, after getting the role, I noticed there was an edit in the script and it described my character as Lebanese.
Okay.
And I thought that was really sweet.
Okay,
that he took the moment, the time to really just go in, and it won't change the story or affect it.
Sure.
The story is not really about the culture in this case, but to keep it appropriate and authentic in the way he's presenting it, and had me play Amir, a Lebanese character.
Right.
And that's in Leaves of Glass, which will be coming out soon.
That is such a wonderful example of someone taking note and making seemingly a minor edit, but an edit that made such a big difference to just the quality of the experience for you as an artist, and for the people who are going to see it. They're going to be like, oh my God, this is so authentic. This is so appropriate. But when that's not done, it is really quite confusing to watch. I think it's like another example is when directors take on this responsibility of creating a piece of work, doing deep research, and then having like kind of a mind share of people from the different cultures that they want to write about. Ideally, having like an important head writer from that culture that can talk talk on it, about it, and then educate the whole body of work. It just comes across so much better. And then when that's not done, it leaves much to be kind of desired in this day and time.
So it starts in the writer's room for a lot of these projects, and back to what we were talking about before, not to beat a dead horse, but it's about education. My Middle Eastern parents didn't say, go be a writer, spend your time, being an actor, get that skill set. So I encourage all those of you listening, if you're, figuring out what to do and you have a passion for entertainment, it is a whole business. There is a lot more to it than just your, lottery card at getting a hit movie, TV show, or song. So consider refining those skills and learning to write and learning to do business.
Yeah, and accents too, right? That's a whole other area within it. Casting is one thing, so the look, we've been focusing a lot on the look of the person. And then comes the accents, and that's the scary part. It's so kind of dicey to accept a role where you pretty much look like that other person, but if there is any moments where you're expected to talk in that accent, I think that's a big no-no if you cannot authentically do that.
I know agents and casting will tell you, if you're going to do an accent, if it's on your resume and you say you can do it, you better be perfect at it. Yeah. You better study it and know it front and back. And I studied accents in school. I still try to keep them sharp. That's something in my downtime, the ones I know that I'll use. And funny enough, especially for commercial work, sometimes there's accents involved. And I make sure to look it up on YouTube, do a refresher, make sure I'm very, very strong at it if I'm going to present with it. Going into auditions, especially in my years in New York when I was just starting off in auditioning, and film TV was being more conscious of diversity, I'd go in for Middle Eastern characters, but I'd hear a lot, try to sound more like, you're new in the States, right? Try to sound more like your parents. And I'm like, you want me to have an accent?
Yeah.
Just say, can you do it with an accent? Some of my Black friends, they've personally shared with me, casting might say, can you, just make it a little bit more like street talk? Yeah. Or can you make it a little bit more, urban? Or can you take us to church?
Oh my God.
Right? And it's just like, that's so offensive. That's so culturally inappropriate. Yeah. And what's that even mean? Do you mean you want it louder with more energy? Do you mean you want it more casual and more slang? Do you mean you want it, you know what I mean? That's real direction. And hey, I'm not saying all casting or all this or that, but I'm saying that was a wave. It might still be for a bit now with some companies and people. And like you said, there's more consciousness and awareness of it now. And hopefully we're heading in the right direction.
And I think when an actor reads the script, they kind of know what needs to be done, how that script needs to be delivered nicely for the character to be, fully done justice to. But when a director is giving direction, it has to be cautiously worded. It has to be, well communicated. So
that's their job, is to give good direction that's specific and thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes a good director.
This is an ongoing topic. I feel like we're going to be discussing appropriation, kind of the development in that, a few weeks from now.
Yes, so stay tuned. And with that, now for our pop culture moment. Kavita?
You know what? I've been thinking about AI and its, kind of advent into our pop culture right now. I feel like AI is going to play a huge part in entertainment overall. We saw last week, we were talking about AI and its influence in film and TV, the writer's strike, the effect it's going to have on production houses, actors' futures, their voice, likeness, all of that, right? In music too, AI-generated song production is a real thing. It's we're already halfway there with so much digitally created sound, but now with artist voices and those AI-generated songs kind of going viral on social media. Is this the way the future is going to be? Do we embrace it? Do we make this like an AI-generated song of mine can be used provided you give me 50% royalties? Or do we say absolutely not, you're not allowed to at all release a song using a certain artist's AI voice? I don't know where this is going to be headed, but I really do think that we have to come to terms with the fact that that is part of our future, like many things. And 2 years from now, we may be sitting here listening to like an entire album created by an AI voice of an artist that we love and loving it. Who knows?
Right. I know in last month's Rolling Stone, David Guetta said AI will win over human creators. He said, you cannot fight this and it's impossible. And kind of talking about what you're saying, whether legislation's passed now, which it should be for safety, most importantly, but ultimately, regardless of legislation, we're moving forward with technology. Imagine if we were still stuck on dial-up and we didn't embrace broadband and DSL and high-speed internet. It's changed the way our world works, and AI will, but the goal is for the better.
And then what happens? So it's like such an open topic, wide open space. If AI-generated voices are going to become the next song or the next album or the next audio, music that you're listening to, then what is the work of the actual artist whose voice is being digitally recreated? Are there other ways for them to continue creating? Is there other value for it? And a few years down the road, that may become the norm.
The first thing that came to mind when you said that to me was the word theater. Theater is the answer, I think, there. Not the answer, but an answer in terms of it's live. It's a personal, visceral connection. And maybe we go back to the roots of live entertainment because a robot can't provide that connection, that, human interaction. That's the whole point. Now, it's a debated topic, and it's unfolding before our eyes, and it's affecting everyone in job sectors everywhere. But I think ultimately when it comes to art, there's something about the human touch. And don't forget, art is collaborative. So we've collaborated with machines and tech for a while in creating music and putting on productions, whether it's special effects or the way you produce an audio track with different vocals and layering and instruments or synths, right? This is just another level of technology, and it's a much more extreme level, but it's another one, and we have to learn to master it.
Absolutely. And I think it may be a conversation to have on the acceptability of it, and may vary from artist to artist, but we are at the pinnacle, at the crux of this happening, as he said. And I think coming to terms with it and figuring out how your royalty structure would be designed, should that be something you want to offer as an artist, that opens up so many doors for producers to go ahead and use your voice for their art, and so on and so forth. So we'll have to see how all this unfolds.
Exactly. Another interesting headline. This is from VentureBeat. Metaphysic partners with CAA Creative Artists Agency to develop generative AI for creative artists. So what that means, through their partnership, they're going to work together to create deals for their artists across film, TV, and entertainment. This is about deep fakes. It's about them using and creating deep fakes of artists that CAA or others may have to produce content, so the artist can just give approval of their likeness and not have to show up.
Yep, goes back to that Black Mirror episode. So yeah, it is going to be a part of our fabric, and I really do think that coming to terms with it and working towards accepting it, I think it's each artist's personal decision at this point. But if there is regulation, I think we'll see more and more people starting to monetize on this.
Right. And, you know, both of our opinions may change. I know we're both open-minded in terms of how we're seeing this develop and how we work with AI on a case-by-case and day-by-day, project-by-project basis. So let us know in the comments whether you're following us on TikTok or on Instagram, or even if you're watching this on YouTube with video, let us know what you think the future is going to look like with AI, especially in film, TV, or music.
Yes. Sounds great.
And with that said, it's a bittersweet ending today as we wrap up our first season. Kavita, can you believe season one is wrapping?
Oh my goodness. We feel like we just started, and we're already 8 episodes down.
Yes. So cheers to that,
Cheers
Kavita.
to that.
Cheers.
Thank you, bestie.
Thank you, bestie. And you can catch season 2. And Kavita, let's give them a sneak peek. What's going to be different in season 2?
We are going to be having guests.
That's right.
Yes.
Very special
guests. And we look forward to sharing their experiences as well, having conversations with them, and bringing more people into the fold, having this dialogue and sharing of views. I think it'll be very exciting to hear from some of our friends, our guests, our professionals, colleagues, on their journeys as well.
Yeah, and between me and you, we know some fantastically incredible people across the entertainment space. So if you don't want to miss this, tune back in starting next month after the summer holidays wrap. And just know that we're going to be having some fantastic surprises when we come back.
Yes, absolutely. Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
So till then, I'm Walid Shaya.
I'm Kavita Raj.
And this is Lights,
Camera,
and Conversation.
Cheers.
Hey, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow on Instagram and TikTok. We love interacting. Also, the content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, which we love, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Lights, Camera, Conversation or our individual authors, hosts, or guests. Nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. We always encourage you to do your research. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Lights, Camera, Conversation. The views expressed by speakers are their own, and their appearance on our program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Thanks for listening, and until next time, have a great day.